So I usually like to give a preamble when we're starting a topic like this because of you need to know what is inspiring this. First and foremost, like I was telling someone this evening, that it's not as if Unreligious, we just sit down and do like this, what do we want to talk about? Boom, let's talk about this. That's not how it really works. So I think it's a bit deeper than that. But it doesn't stop the fact that we will still, the platform belongs to the congregation, so it's where difficult questions are supposed to be answered, which is story for another day. But this particular topic, cannot fit into Mindshift. It can't fit into Triangle, and it cannot fit into iLeap. But it is as important as business, if I'm more important than business. I won't say more important than marriage, but they say health is wealth. So sometimes there's that sense of responsibility not to hoard information and knowledge that would help people be better. So I'll tell you a story, because I will not lie, I did struggle with this topic. Not that I didn't want to talk about it, but I don't know the disposition. Now, it's not as if I've not forgiven you people, but I'm still carrying a grudge about our Heaven and Hell series. It was one of my most whatever unreligious session was just to ask simple questions and to hopefully inspire others. But it didn't seem to sit well. Everybody was like, okay, don't bring this kind of topic here again. So since then, one has not recovered from that. But I hope health will not be the same. Now, I want to begin first of all by, recognizing those who are maybe dealing with a health issue and, a challenge. Not recognized, but, God still heals, and we believe that. And we're not taking that away. Even I won't call her my mentor, but my advisor on some of these things, when she finishes all her recommendations, she'll tell you God is the ultimate healer. That's true, and we're not going to dispute that or even have any conversation around that. It is settled. But peradventure, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Now, another group of people who are healthy today, no problems, but if they had knowledge and information, would be better off. And that is the preamble for this. We're a young church, and like Doctor who was coming up said to me in private, the best time to prepare for your 70s and 80s is when you're in your 30s and 40s. And I will tell you why. So here's a bit of my story. In 2020, during COVID, my family and we went for a random test. It was actually my kids, I think, that needed something, and then, or my wife, I can't remember. And then I had fatty liver and high cholesterol. So I was like, what's that? So I Googled, blah, blah, blah. And then I immediately called someone. Now, some of you have heard this story. She's in Jos. She's a herbalist. Yeah, sure. I say, okay, send me bill. She sent me bill. I said, more. Madam, cool down first. Almost $500,000 for everything. So I was like, this was 2020, by the way. So I was dragging my feet. She now called me, Emmanuel, how far? Is it the money? We can structure it. Sure. So my wife and I took 2 different treatment plans. She did because she don't travel with me, but I also wanted that time to rest, and just to reflect. So 2 weeks, she locked me up, right? And in the words of my pharmacy friend, she changed my gut, in quotes. So it was later on I understood what she, for, green okra without salt. Like, okra, I just cut. Just boil it without salt. I was begging that, let me have that one at least. Because everything else I was eating was something worse than lettuce, onions, and cucumber. They are not those ones are sweet. Like, they're very sweet. But they look like those things. And she tells me things like, hey, some of these herbs that took 4 years to build, to plant them and have my greenhouse. The fertilizer I use is from rabbit dung. See the rabbit there? One of the finest dungs, like in terms of, but it was there. It was very, so shrunk me. Everybody. So people that really know, you can check. Cut the story short, I came back, everything cleared. Checked, did the tests, cholesterol back to level, blah, blah, blah. So I now began to understand some dynamics, and that was my first experience. But there's something she said. She said, spot it. And it's not as if I was drinking beer or anything. It is that it would just accumulate, because I was like 36, 37 then, or 35, 6, thereabout. No, 36, 7. So she was just telling me that that's how it will accumulate. So by the time I'm 50, it would have become dawned on me that this is what happens over time. Enthusiasm for health, conscious. Please follow me. When I now started to, now, this is the sensitive part, and I say this all sense of responsibility. That's why this is important. And I now started to look at, pay attention to family. And I'm sorry, but I look around, and I see uncles, aunties, and they all start coming with their reports. I mean, not that anything, no criticisms. That's why I say this all sense of responsibility, and it's a prayer. And the cases are a bit from diabetes, borderline, you'll soon be blind, to, or you're not most blind, you're seeing blurry stuff, to just a line of things. And I had to, there has to be a better way. Then I stumbled on this thing on Netflix called Blue Zones, where the guy went to go and study people who live 90, 100, who are still more active than some of us. There's one that rides horse at 100, like this. You see him on the horse, controlling it. And these are different parts of the world. He studied and he now gave us data. So that sense of responsibility now came. Conclusion. Recently again, second round, I went for eye test. If I was my wife that went for eye test. And they now said, okay, high pressure is high. High pressure, which one is that one again? And it shocked me. If me, so-called exposed person, supposed to be exposed, I tell you high pressure is high. Until my friend 3 weeks ago, whose office is in Dominion Plaza here, looked at me and said, his mother is borderline almost blind. I say, how? Apparently she has been carrying high pressure. Now they just said, almost like her nerves, your eye has nerves connected to your brain, it's hanging by a thread. The doctor now told me that the pressure becomes hot and your thread. That's why all this, your glass is fine, Nah, it's not to lower pressure. I mean, you have to take drugs. But at the same time, it was to now become conscious as to check it. Then I now spoke to one of my mentors who told me that her mother has been taking eye drops for high pressure since 1980. And I said, okay now. I can go on and on with stories. But what do I see? Knowledge is power. Now, for those who are not interested in my kind of conversation, let me give the other ones because this is the sphere of influence. Here is the catch for you. I have a client who sells plantain chips. The client told me the problem we're having now is we're trying to balance the books in a way that she lives up to her values because she's very health conscious and she protects her customers. So she says my oil, because the way they fry plantain, they start to put the plantain, they fry it, then they keep topping. She has a particular number she has to change. But guess what? You know what I mean? Change, you remove the oil. You keep pouring because it keeps going and you keep pouring. And she says, the oil, I have my standard, which is one of the January till December. They don't finish that. This one is changing after maybe 10 rounds. January to December, frying oil. And when they finish, they now go and sell it to Mama Put, where you are going to buy food. Do you know what it is to eat oil that has been bleaching since January? NAFDAC, no, they reach this one. With all due respect, please, you can remove that one for the offense. 4 points, write this in last week. One of my friends is a consultant, international, everything. I say, agri consult. I say, what is the problem? And he says, oh boy, the North is under pressure. Because they've overfarmed, they are pouring more more fertilizer and pesticides to stimulate the ground. Like the ground is weak, so they have to pour. That's why they are rejecting our exports abroad. So that's for a different group of people. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation and knowledge is power. Life expectancy. And before I invite our I know I'm shooting a bit beyond my runway. Life expectancy. Let's look at it very quickly. Some of you, countries ranked by life expectancy. According to, let me just open it. World Odometer. Here are the numbers. Number one on the list, 2024. Hong Kong, 85.63 years of age. Japan, Switzerland, Australia, all of them 84. Italy, then the 83 is Italy, Singapore, Spain, UAE 83, Iceland 83, all of them 83. Look at 82s. Martinique, Israel, Canada, Ireland. That means the average, when they gather out, would have died. And for 1,000, they see 80. Do you understand? 60 for men, 64 for women. 3 square meals apparently was killing our dads. Sitting down, putting your leg on the chair, and everybody does everything for you. When I buy dispenser water, you see me remove from the car and be carrying it. My house will be like, no, come and carry. I say, madam, I'm not a nice boss. That's not the reason. I just want to shed calories. That's it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite our guest. I know it took some time, but it's to help us to understand why this is important. And I would like us also to give him a special thank you appreciation. He doesn't know I'm planning this. We're going to stand up and appreciate him for 2 reasons. Wait, hear it why. Now, he has unofficially been our doctor. When I say unofficially, every case. Some of you don't know. Some of you are too young. You're not saying, okay, for me, you don't know. Anything, that's why we say we run to doctor. And he's been gracious to us as an instrumental member of this assembly. They started here, by the way, or in the global here, before they moved, before they got stuck on the mainland with the out of Zion. But the idea is, he's been gracious to us. Even me at the reach, okay, my daughter is coughing. I don't get. You understand? And I would like us to sincerely, from the depth of our hearts, express our gratitude and assembly to him and thank him. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as you receive Dr. Gbolahan. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. By the way, he recently turned 42, so he looks different. It's fresh. Let me heal you, doctor. I heard one gist rumor. They said when you go to his hospital, they say an apple keeps the doctor away. Someone asked, what if the doctor is cute?
Throw the apple away.
Anyway, it's your wife that was cracking the joke, so I was like, okay.
I knew where it came from.
That's a good compliment. It's very dear to all of us. And also, I know him personally. We've been together for a while. I remember the days of, when we were in law school. There was a doctor there and all that. Dr. Brown, thank you again on behalf of the church and anybody who has benefited from your services. We deeply appreciate it, and God will bless you truly. That said, you heard my introduction. Do you have any preliminary feedback or intro, which you actually have? Just respond, take your time. I know we were... But it is well. I needed to give that introduction because I don't want anybody thinking we were in error with this conversation. And I mean that like jokingly, but it's important. There's more I could have said when I've done my research. And I read the countries with their life expectancy. And I'm not going into that debate of, poor countries' prayer. There's not even a conversation here. But knowledge empowers. And I feel this is what we deserve to know. Over to you, sir. Your introductory comments.
Good evening, everybody. And thank you for having me. When we talk about health, there's a lot to talk about, a lot to unravel. But I would like to come from this angle. Most times we've been at conferences and we've talked about health. The question usually I ask people is, what would they want for their health? The statistics out there, it's not so good. There are a lot of chronic illnesses that we used to see in the 60s and the 70s, and you have people in their 20s. So in my practice, I have people in their 20s with high blood pressure, with diabetes. Wow. Yes, so in school they taught we have different types of diabetes. So we have type 1, which can occur early. Type 2 is usually much later because of other things which we'll still get into. But you have people with type 2 diabetes showing up early in their 20s, and that's a problem. Sometimes I think for every 5 patients I see, at least 2 of them would have either diabetes or hypertension or both. Yes, and that already starts to affect even your long term, because depending on how you manage that, starts to affect what you get to do, how long you live, and how well you live. You talked about pressure in the eye.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's related to people who have these chronic illnesses, high blood pressure, you understand, diabetes, and a few other things. But the question really here, and where I want to look at, is the question to everybody is, how long do you want to live? When you talk about tests you run, you practically should test every organ, every system. You understand? So biology, we did digestive system, we did respiratory system, circulatory system, your neurological system. So you actually should test everything. Yeah, but there are some general ones which we'll still talk about. But the question really is, how long do you want to live? And then most times when I ask people, I want to live as long as I am fit. I don't want to be that grandpa or grandma that we have to carry, or because it's a burden. So that question is, that means that a lot of people want to live long, but they want to be sure that they live well. When you talk about Blue Zone, of course, the book is talking about lessons on how to set goals. If your goal is to live long, then the question is to figure out how to do it, which we're going to be talking about today. But the next thing really is not to stop about learning how, is actually to have the discipline to stick to those principles, to stick to those things that we'll get to talk about. So life expectancy is not, so we say life expectancy is in the 60s for Nigeria, but you have people who are 90. My grandmother is close to 90. You have people who live up to 100, you understand? But we're talking about the average. So it means that even though the life expectancy is not so high, we could, of our own, of course, look at genetics and environmental factors and determine how long would live. I would like to just stop here that there are foundations and there are things you want to look at when you're considering long-term wellness. And I'm going to be talking about them on 4. They're going to sit on the table of 4. We're looking at physical health, exercise, nutrition, rest, mental clarity. We're talking mindfulness. We're talking about stress management, and that's a big one here. Emotional resilience, forgiveness, gratitude, positivity, and then spiritual connection, community, sense of purpose, legacy. These are things that you found in people who have actually lived long, and those are 4 areas that I'm going to address much of what we're going to be talking about today.
Fantastic. Please, let's give him a warm welcome. That's a warm introductory welcome. Now, if you're just joining us, please go and listen to my introduction after. But this is an important conversation. Now, sir, I want us to delve into men, women, and children. And I want us to get practical. Now, I know that you're a GP. I forgot to mention, GP over 15 years. So he's not a special. And I wanted us to start with a generalist first before we narrow down, which you can understand my bias. If you don't know, you don't know. But you know what I mean. So let's run through men, women, and children. And this deception of, I'm in my 20s and 30s, so I don't care. You said people are getting it earlier now. I'm not that we're, trying to scare anyone, but we have to be careful. I mean, one of my younger family relatives was in that, like 9 years old, 8 years old. He said high pressure in the eyes. Obviously, hereditary. But what scared me, sir? Thank you, was I went to meet somebody yesterday in Abuja. We're talking. And the person said something, I sell this drink, blah, blah. And I said, so how much is sugar? I was trying to help her do unit economics. And she said, I don't use normal sugar. I said, what do you mean? She laughed. I use industrial sugar. I was like, what does that mean? Apparently, it's like one type. I just said, hey, God. But she said, how do you want me to make profit? So poverty is making us. I don't even know what to do. I was quiet. So I now entered the plane. They gave me one drink. I said, I must sit down here. You must be industrial. Men, women, and children. Tests. For children, we'll come to, because we have a lot of young mothers, we'll come to that. But walk us through men. Let's do, typically it's from 40, or if anything in 30. What tests should be known? Just open our eyes to preventive measures first. I think that's where we're focused on this conversation. We're trying to act smartly and move, with knowledge. So let's talk men and let's talk women. Some people know, but you need to emphasize.
Okay, so talking about men and women, because I'll talk about the test that's common, and then I'll move on to the ones that are unique. Yes. And like I started, a human being is a whole organism, but we're comprised of different systems. And those systems are integrated and controlled by, of course, what we call central nervous system. So when you're running tests, you're looking at almost everything. But first is the blood actually connects all tissues, all organs, because it supplies the nutrients, supplies oxygen, and then the toxins, the waste comes from it. That's why a bulk of the test we'll do is carried out using the blood, because there are other tissues, the sweat, saliva, and we'll get to that. So I think from 20s, I'll just take decades, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and 40 to 50. So I think 20 to 30, we're now looking at your lipid profile. We talk about cholesterol. We want to check what's the lipid profile. Lipid profile, you have a list of about 5 different cholesterols. And then want to check where the range. Is it within the normal range? Is it high? Is it low? And that's something to check within 20 to 30s. Also, you routinely now check. Now, before, we're looking at lipid profile, the kidney function. Now, the kidney is really related to the blood pressure. Now, generally, most of high blood pressure, we say it's essential because the cause is not really known. Most likely, it's hereditary. And maybe I should just say this at this point, that the fact that it's hereditary does not necessarily mean that you get to experience it. So, because if you don't carry the same gene, then you don't. But even if you do that, your lifestyle can determine how early or how late it comes. So, like those who've had high blood pressure in their 20s, 30s, there are some other practices because of some of the toxins that a lot of people in that age group take these days, and then they affect the liver and then can cause high blood pressure. But if for someone who takes care of himself, eats right, exercises, good lifestyle choices, might not actually develop the high blood pressure until much later, or might really not even have that. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I just wanted to say that. But you're looking at the system, so the kidney, you want to check the kidney function. How well is the kidney filtering urine? Because when you run the test, they actually will tell you the filtration rates. So you know this is the level it should be. So you can actually gauge and say, okay, my kidney is working well, or it's not. So 2030s, liver function, kidney function, fasting lipid profile. Then, then those are like general things you want to check. You can check your eye pressure. Because now we're bringing some of those things, but 2030, if you check, if you don't check, we might not really. But when you move to 30 to 40, you have to start doing that. Okay, I'll come to the one unique, so let me just go. So 30 to 40, you're doing all the things I've talked about. You've checked your liver, you checked your kidney, you checked your cholesterol. You add your ECG to that. So you're checking your ECG. Usually we usually say you don't need to check that till 40. So what's the ECG? ECG is the just measuring the electrical activity of the heart. So it kind of helps us figure out that, okay, the heart is functioning well. So the heart is contracting and relaxing, pumping blood well. Based on your ECG, you might actually even guess that, some parts, some chambers of the heart is becoming enlarged.
Wow.
Yes, so you can, it's just simple. You go to the gym every day, what happens to your muscle? You get buffed up, right? Mm-hmm. Buff and all. Yes, so the muscle. So if the heart is pumping at a faster rate than it should, or so let me explain pressure. Let me just.
No, please. Very important.
All right. So high blood pressure, two different ways you can actually, two different principles. First, if you're washing your car with a hose, and then you reduce the diameter, you press the tip. What happens to the pressure with the water? It goes faster. So you have cholesterol deposits in the blood vessels. It reduces the lumen. So the blood that will move across where the narrowing is will increase pressure. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I explained this to my patient that, so think about it that your kidney is being flogged with a high pressure of blood. So the blood that should just flow into it is hitting it, pushing out blood. You understand? And that force is now measured by the number of times the heart beats in 1 minute. So the heart that beats 50 times in the minute would not push a bit fast a minute, and the one that pumps 120 times a minute, which one will last longer? The one that pumps 50 times a minute. And we found out that in athletes or people who exercise regularly, their resting heart rate is around 40, 50. So most of the athletes, if you actually check their heart rate, they're around 40, 50, meaning that the demand for, you remember, I'm bringing this story. Mm-hmm. Many years ago, we went to play football.
Yeah.
Emmanuel was so wise, he was just jogging around the field. He didn't even join us. And that was where my own story of health and well-being, wellness and conscience came. And I was like Samson now, that I would get up as of old and shake my body. The body didn't shake. I got on the pitch, and after 5 minutes, I felt like passing out. Wow. Because after then, I went to and I saw that my resting heart rate was in the 90s.
Wow.
And then exercises, walking and all of that, and then it dropped. And in fact, the first time I checked, I was reading 74. I was like, wow, great. So what happened then was that 90 jumped to like 120, 130. That's too much. The heart is really like overworking itself. Yes, so that's what, so ECG helps us to get that. So you can actually know early. So if there's a part of the heart, like the left side, which pumps to the whole body, is having to pump at faster rates, most likely we call it hypertrophy, it enlarges. So ECG helps you to know that, and that's why it's important to check, even as 30, 40. So you check your ECG, 30 to 40, and then all the other ones I've talked about. At this point, you want to check your high pressure, because it's important to start to check that. Now, there are some tests which are routinely I assume that we do. Check your blood level, check if there's infection. That's when we're sick. And maybe when I'm talking about the kids, I'll say a bit about that. So when you cross 40, ECG is compulsory. ECG is compulsory, both man and then woman, men and women, and then every other test are talked about. So let me just also talk about unique tests. So from 20, cervical pap smear.
From 20?
20, yes.
Wow.
So ideally, once you're 21, you should do pap smear, get the pap smear done every 3 years.
Wow.
There's not something we do a lot in Nigeria, and I think I said, let me use this platform.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's pause here, sir. Let's take a second.
Yes.
I don't want them to lose this. They said a lot of analytical things, and you know me, I teach basic fundamentals. I was listening to the math he was giving. I don't know whether so when they do all those heart rates and they show you those numbers, they just tell you it's 120, go. He's giving you the science of why it is 120. I just got that now. I'm not joking, all right? Google didn't explain that to me. So now we've reached a very sensitive matter. And I know it's sensitive because a lot of people, you know the whole thing. So calm and listen. Over to you, sir.
Okay, yeah. So pap smear, why am I talking about pap smear? It's the routine screening to help for early detection of cervical cancer. So cervix is, I say late
they know what
like
it
the
means.
opening to the womb when you're coming from the, yes. So a woman who most likely will have cervical cancer, there's some changes that are caused around the cervix. There's some cellular changes that you can pick quite early. And if you pick it early, we also have treatments for that, such that you can prevent and help that woman from developing cervical cancer later. In fact, it's one of the preventable cancers that we have.
But it's also very prevalent.
It's prevalent. So that's what I'm
second
going
or
to.
third.
Yes. So it's caused, there's a virus that's really been, that is associated with cervical cancer. That's HPV, human papilloma virus. A few months ago, I don't know if the drive is still on, where we have girls from 9 years are being vaccinated, against human papilloma virus. Because that's the other way. You can prevent it by vaccinating. Once you vaccinate a girl or a lady against the virus, then she's protected from the virus.
How often does that vaccination happen?
Yeah, so usually when you come and you take the virus, I think protects for about 10 years or above, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay, what about women in their 30s and 40s?
So for women in their 30s, because the question would be, why didn't we have that rollout for that age? They will have to do a pap smear.
First.
And most likely also do a HPV test. Because you have to know that the woman does not have the virus before you then go ahead and administer the vaccine.
So they can still take it after
the
those
logistics of all of that is why they just decided to focus. I think 9 to 13 or 9 to, I can't remember.
You know, my daughter is 9.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
So she should get it.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah, so human papilloma virus is sexually transmitted.
Scary. Take that back.
Sexually transmitted.
Okay.
So then the idea is, okay, if it's not sexually transmitted, but this is prevention. So 21, either you're sexually active or not, it's actually advisable to just go do the pap smear and also to get the vaccine. So get the vaccine, it protects. Regular checks also. So 20 to 30 every 3 years. 30 to 50 now. So every 3 years. But if by then they actually do the HPV test too. If you're doing the HPV test, sometimes they say you can do every 5 years. So if you're doing the HPV test and doing the pap smear. Pap smear is they just take a smear with a brush from the cervix and then they check the cells under the microscope. So if there are no changes, then of course the woman is let go and then go. So I think 30 to up to 50 every 3 years or every 5 years. And then I think from 65, if you've had 3 consecutive pap smear that's negative, you are told that you're free, and then you don't really need to check that again. So pap smear is not what we've done a lot. We've not done that a lot. And then even for those of us in the health space, I'm not sure we've picked that enough to protect our ladies from cervical cancer. So that's that. Then, of course, breast self-examination. And that's also for early detection if there's any lump, any mass in the breast, so that we can also treat and prevent breast cancer. The advice is always, when you check and you feel anything you're not sure, always get to a health personnel, a doctor, a trained nurse, to actually help to examine. And then they can help, or if it's lump. And the best time to check usually is after the menstrual flow, because at that point, the breast is not as lumpy as it is maybe around ovulation and close to the next flow.
Wow.
So that's for women. If I remember another thing, then for men, prostate.
Or more.
So growing up, and I'm sure you watch a lot of comedies where they say once you're 40, you go to see the doctor for proctoscopy.
Yeah.
Or a digital rectal examination. Digital, finger, rectal through the anus examination, and we don't like that. But now, so you could do a prostate scan, an ultrasound scan for prostate, and then prostate-specific antigen, that's the hormone released by the prostate. You can also use that to monitor. So once you are between 30 to 40, you may or may not. But from 40, we expect you to actually do that. Prostate cancer, unlike cervical cancer, might not occur. Most times don't occur until much later in life. Sometimes, even in school, I remember my lecturer, urologist, saying that if they ask you to prove if there's only one cancer, they say you are going to have one cancer in life. Which cancer should you pick? He says, as a man, pick prostate cancer because it means that you're going to live a long life, usually. But then I've seen people in their 50s also with prostate cancer. Like I said, a lot of those things that used to
be a long time ago are now coming closer.
Yes,
and I think that's why this topic is very important.
Yes. And then you touch, so that's, I think that's that. Then, okay, colonoscopy, I didn't talk about that. Colonoscopy is actually, they put, scope is like you're using an object to look into. So colonoscopy is looking at the large intestine. That's for men and women. But also it's also another preventable cancer if you actually detect it early. There's this actor, I've forgotten his name now. I was watching the clip. He's in his 90s now. He looks very fit. But he survived cancer. The cancer he survived was colon cancer.
Wow.
But because it was detected very early, not when he showed symptoms. Was because of the routine check, and that's what we're talking about. When to have a routine check, they discovered it, and of course, was treated, and then he's now in 90. It was discovered when he was maybe in his 50s. This 40 years afterwards. Yeah. So those are tests, common tests that we look at. Now there are some other tests, like you mentioned, pesticides. Now a lot of people might not know that you can actually check that.
Yeah, well, I just found out recently.
Okay, yeah. So you can actually check.
Please listen to him. He said you can test for pesticides.
Yeah, so either your blood, sometimes they check saliva or the urine. They actually check for some of the chemical compounds. And because now you also know that because, like you talked about what's going on in the north, then also with a bit of, some people apply some of these things to improve the turnover. Like even when we plant our crops and all that, you want them to move from planting to harvest. When some that should be 4 months, you want it in 2 months, 3 months. There are a few things that people are now doing now. And then I'm also a bit concerned, maybe that's a bit personal, and this genetic re-engineering and all of that. It is long time for us to even know the effects of some
That's
of
why we
these
say we
things.
have to be competent. We have to be competent so we can do this research ourselves and not rely on foreigners.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can also check these things. They check all these organophosphates and all of the organophosphates from your blood flow. So these are things you personally could say, okay, I want to go check and all that. What's the way out of that?
Business opportunity for somebody.
Growing what we
become our organic plug in TBC. Did you hear that? He's ready. Here you buy.
Yeah, I'll buy.
Yeah, you see him, he's fresh. You buy. He has money. I'm just joking.
Yeah. So that's that. So those are general tests that you could do. Let me say a little bit about ultrasound scanning and CT scan and some of that, just for knowledge sake. So ultrasound scan, most times, of course, our women would know that. So we do that a lot with pregnancy and all. But ultrasound scan is just using sound waves to actually look at our organs. So like the test you did, apart from cholesterol, a scan could actually also look at the liver and say, okay, there's fatty liver here. Could look at the kidneys. Could look at, and those are part of the comprehensive test we'll do. So I think it's important we also include that. And going for comprehensive tests as an adult, I think every 6 months is not actually too much to go check. And if you check and they say something is looking like borderline or whatever, then you might actually have to check a lot more frequent, and then of course adjust life styles to help take care of that.
Amazing. Please let's keep hands together for that. This summary of what he has said is you need to go and check. I mean, I do admit that I'm behind on my checks, and I'm saying that public, and I need to go. I mean, this topic was conceived way before this. You understand? It was supposed to be probably last month, but we had something going on. All right. Now, I would like to open the floor to the audience. My usual is not here, Chiamaka. So I hope you will not, let me not talk. But are there any questions from the audience? I would like to just bring in some opinions because I have my own questions, but I don't want to leave that. But while I'm waiting for questions, anybody questions? If you can, our style. Please, Tonya, you need to help me. There needs to be a podium here. The whole 9 yards. They come to the front and they ask their questions so the camera can show their faces. Thank you, sir, for that. Sir, let's talk about children. Two sides of the children. We have the growing ones, agile, heavy, and then we now have the babies. I didn't want to say this, but one of the things that, because this topic was brewing, but when I met Daisy in Abuja, and she told me what happened, that I'm even afraid to talk about. But because it happened to your daughter, I don't know. What do you think? Should we skip the topic or do we? We can talk. Okay, so let's start from there and then just educate nursing mothers, educate. You can say a bit about the story and educate the ones that have the 8, 9s. I know the whole battle of whether they should take Capri-Sun. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't call brands, but the thing I just put and when I'm now hearing things like that, these are 20. Let's just be empowered. I knew when I went home, my mom there's one soup she said, I can't eat this food. And I know the soup, would you be angry? The soup just looks slimy, it's one village soup, but you can tell this was just leaves gathered and knocked together with small salt and Maggi. And he's like, oh, this one will carry your blood, but I don't fit. I arrange a goosey, I beg. I don't know what this one is. Or white soup, or ofewere. That's dedicated to someone. Tell me, sir.
Okay, so we want to talk about health for the kids or for children. It starts from pregnancy. The life of a child could be determined literally by what the mother does or doesn't do, what she takes or does not take. We know, and because of time, there are drugs that you don't take while you're pregnant because of the effect on the baby. Even alcohol. Alcohol, actually, there's something called fetal alcohol syndrome. But sometimes they tell me that I take alcohol in pregnancy and nothing happens to you. I say it's because you've not seen that symptom. If you've seen it, you wouldn't take it, of course, because maybe you take it while you didn't even know the baby has been conceived. But that's one thing. The next thing is vaccinations. I think the responsible thing is to actually have your child immunized. Because the concept of immunization is, having looked at the prevalent diseases or illnesses, especially for children in the first 5 years, we've had research and then we have vaccines now to protect them against it. We also sometimes we still have some conversation because there are some things that, we are still taking, like pregnancy now you take tetanus tox because of prevention of the transmission of neonatal tetanus. And that's because in some parts of the country, they are unsanitary. Some people give birth under unsanitary conditions. And then, of course, the bacteria is found in the soil and all. Because you most likely would think that, where we give birth, there's nothing like that. But generally, and that's how this thing. So there's really nothing wrong in actually taking it. It protects the child from tetanus. And so the first thing is immunization. That's the first thing. The next thing is, let me just talk about this here so that I can move on. There's a term known as sudden infant death syndrome. And that's, it's simple. That a baby, the mother just goes or someone goes and finds that the baby that was kept is dead. And that happened. So I knew about it, but I didn't really read it until we had an experience. And for different reasons. Sometimes babies kept to lie down, and then the baby, that's why sometimes the advice is even keep the head down. Baby is lying face up, and then either the baby vomits, and then aspirates the vomiters. Or the cloth, actually, while they're struggling, they pull the cloth or the shawl over themselves and then suffocate. I know, not a pretty sight, nothing anybody wants to experience. And that's why that period, especially after birth to within 2, 3, 6 months, is a period of close monitoring. Also, of course, we trust that God helps us to keep them. But there are some of these things. Now, so let me talk about aspiration, because that happened. And the story is this. I was at work, and the Holy Spirit actually got me because I was just restless at work. And I'm like, there's nothing going on at work. I want to go. I was supposed to work till 5. Then I spoke to the doctor who was supposed to take my own practice and all. And say, There's nothing happening. Since I stay here, if there's any patient, they'll just come. You can go. So I went home. I got home, greeted everybody, and went into the room. I don't think I was up to 5 minutes at home when I heard the shout of my name. What happened was, no, I came back, we were watching TV, and then baby was lying beside, and we just looked. I'm not sure if it was myself or Daisy, just turned and saw that baby was choking and struggling. Could not make any sound, such that we could literally be watching that movie, and then she could have choked on her vomit. And by the time we just checked, she was choking and all. And thank God I was at home, because I knew what to do. You understand? And the thing. Okay, let me just explain. What do you do? Because you have stuff. So what you most times around that time we advise you have mucus extractor at home. You have this, either the traditional one or the one with the ball, which you can then put in, because I think she was choking either on kata, because kata also could cause this, or she threw out and then the vomiters was going to block. So I had to do a lot of, so two things. One is to suck, then, or you could also turn the baby face down and then pat on the back, because with gravity you want whatever is in to come, because a baby that is struggling to breathe will keep trying to suck in air, and then that's like literally sucking liquids and whatever it is. Yeah, so it's a combination of you're turning up the baby's face down and then gentle pats on the back to help, and then also try to suck this. And of course, if you don't have mucus extractor at home, what else do you use to suck? Natural, right? Yeah. And yes, and that's what we had to do. And so how do you prevent that? The major things to prevent vomiting, and what do you do after feeding? You want to keep the baby up for like 20 minutes until the baby bops. So baby bops after 5 minutes. Don't drop the baby, because that might just be that's gas. Because when they are sucking in the breast milk, they're also sucking air. So it's the air that's coming up to the surface, and then that should come out. So they actually bob the first, and sometimes you wait a bit, and there's another one. And sometimes when they bob, because the air is coming, it comes with part of the breast milk. And then, but because you're carrying the baby, everything just comes out. But when you drop the baby too soon, and baby vomit, depending on the position, they actually might vomit. They might not be able to generate even enough force to get everything out. And then some is around the mouth, and then baby also tries to breathe, and then sucks in the air. That's what. So the best way to prevent is also to feed. After you're done feeding, keep the baby for like 20 minutes. You know how long I was keeping? After the 20 minutes, I'll just keep baby. After the first one, I'll just keep baby like this. I said, don't worry, I'll stay like this and stay with the baby at an angle. So, and if it happened once, you also have to be careful, because it might happen the second time. Hers was just once, and then thank God that all of that was good. But you've had cases like that. You had parents rush their baby to the hospital. Some good news that by the time before they get there, even the baby gets better. Some might not be so. And so that happens. That could happen. So the way you place the baby, feeding of the baby, that's important. So vaccines early in life. I naturally don't, if there is no re-indication for that. So for example, if for any reason there's sepsis or infection during period, maybe from mother to baby, or we could based on the history or tests, then you treat. I try to avoid antibiotics very early. You know, antibiotics kill cells. Sometimes you might be knocking off some of your cells that also affects the baby's immunity. So I always advise, best you do is vitamin C. Vitamin C, zinc tablets, helps to build their immunity. So sometimes they are coughing. I'm moving from babies to, of course, toddlers and all. So there's cough, we're running. You know, we have this culture here. Sometimes, even when we go see a doctor and you're coughing, and doctor feels that this cough is viral, most times, most of the causes of cough, the most commonest cause of cough is a viral infection. And a viral infection means that it's going to run its course. You understand? There are times where maybe after a few days, there's a super infection of the bacteria, and at that point, the doctor then can start antibiotics. So we are so used to that culture, and then we transfer that to our kids. The child is coughing and might be viral, and you should allow it to run its course, and then the next thing is we are flogging with antibiotics. And sometimes by starting that too early and then repeatedly, sometimes it affects the immunity of the child. So then the child becomes so sickly, and you are going almost every time and all that. I'm not saying that happens all the time, and don't mean that causes it, but allowing the child to also fight off, especially when it's a viral infection, because the body will naturally go build and it will build the immune defense against that infection. So when there's an organism in the body, what the body starts to generate antibodies. And what happens to antibodies, most times some of those antibodies stay in the system. And that's the concept of immunization or vaccine. Sometimes we actually bring an impotent disease to the vaccine. So it's introduced. That's why after some immunizations, the child actually develops a fever and all those ones. So the body, recognizing that this is there, mounts a defense and builds antibodies. And then the memory of that entire process remains in the body system, yes. So the next time that thing is coming, they don't need to figure out or call a strategic session on how to fight. They already have that memory. Yeah, no, God's just great. So that's SOP is present, and then the body just releases. So it's always good to also help the body, allow the body to mount up defense against some of these things, so it's easily they can. Yes, so that's that, because most of the common illness is respiratory, cough, and malaria, and all the likes. One important point for kids is to avoid leaving them with a high body temperature. That's why we're taught most times that once there's a fever, give paracetamol or ibuprofen, depending on the age, because there's something we call febrile seizures. So in children, especially less than 3, when they have temperatures in the range of 40 degrees Celsius and higher, 39, 40, they might actually convulse. And the convulsion is not because of either the malaria or the respiratory tract infection. It's the temperature. So that's why it's more like, say, give paracetamol, give a cold, allow baby take a cold bath and start coming to the hospital. Not the baby is hot and you're rushing to the hospital. Give that first aid of paracetamol or ibuprofen to at least start working on regulating or bringing down the temperature before we get to the hospital. Then lastly, lifestyle changes that we want, like we are taught. If we learn some of these things growing up, we're having a conversation about 3 square meals.
Yes.
I don't know. I grew up with the knowledge that you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In fact, we used to joke and we used to say that, see, things are so tough, we now do 101. Thinking that the 0 was actually because
of poverty.
Because at that time, you can't even afford. And like I was telling you, 101 just came naturally in school, in the university, only for me to realize that that's actually the way to go. And people talk a lot about intermittent fasting, and that's I don't know. I don't think you need to eat more than twice in a day. And then there are conversations along there, which I think maybe in other series you get to look into, because what's your caloric intake and what's the caloric need per day? Because there are ways you can calculate these things and all to know, okay, what you actually need and then what you need to take. So if you're looking at, for example, for people who have their body stature, they like that and that. So just need to, it's like maintenance dose. And then if you're looking to lose weight, you have to actually take less than what you need. So the body then goes to, of course, from the store. Yeah. So the lifestyle we want to, some of the things I think we'll start to talk about that. Mm-hmm. I think I should just move into
No. Okay, no. Go right away.
Okay, no, I'll just say a little then. Maybe I'll talk about it in the next. So some of those things we want to eating right, drinking water, taking water, eating right, as in a lot of our processed foods. Because if we want a child to develop the culture of taking fruits, organic, they have to learn it when they are very young. So when they take more of smoothies prepared at home as opposed to fizzy drinks. So their taste buds and all of that is used to that. They don't then grow up and then have to take those. So those are some of the things we can also do to help them. So they don't have to start struggling like some of us do, or we have to then move from fizzy drinks to just taking, of course, fruits, juice, naturally made fruit juices and the likes. I think I'll say them.
Hallelujah. How many of you have been blessed? You want to... Sorry. Am I the only one who's blessed? Are you guys learning something? Yes, sir. I know, don't flatter me. Are you serious? Are you learning something down? Questions from the audience. Shamaka just walked in. I hope you are listening online. Were you? Okay. We need to talk about that. Anyway, on a lighter note. That's one of our, Pastor Dele called our hand. Exactly. By the way, for those who don't know, Pastor Dele singled out. Apparently, this gospel had reached London. And God bless her for it. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have questions that you want to ask, please? Or you're just following and hitting the notes? I mean, I did my work for you. Dr. Gbolahan, we're running out of time, but we'll still tie this up. You said some very important things, and I think one of the things that I hammer on is, number one, we need to test. And I'm trying to synthesize the key things you said. One of the things I also take away is we need to be well informed. And I think that is, so if you want to, for those of you who are sitting down and you don't really, okay, is this to scare you? No. It's two things. It's to inform you. But you have to be well informed. So now you know. But let me tell you what you need to know. Is you now need to develop a natural curiosity that will help you to continue to just, follow these things. Not to sit down and listen to, it's not old man's fables per se, but there are people who are not professionals, especially for the young ones, are just giving advice up and down the place. This is how we do it. Let's be careful. I think he has said it, and it's better to listen to professionals. I mean, even my own little understanding when they told me, when my daughters came, was like, they say things like, once the temperature is an indication of everything. So when I heard it, every time there's a temperature, we just know we need to move on that. We don't just take it lightly, among other things. I mean, not to, to give any advice. Now, it's a very sensitive one. The quality of our healthcare, poor diagnosis. Dr. Brown, how do we navigate that? Because one of the things that these guys that I'm reading and analyzing, the quality of our healthcare system is out of this world. What do we do? What are the hacks? If anything can happen. Thank God for you, people like you that have stuck around to save lives. You could have been doing fine in Canada easily from that time. Well, we don't know. We're outside the will of God, sir. But beyond that, the current healthcare system, what are the hacks? How do we manage? How do I choose a good hospital? For me, I tell you how I choose good hospitals. Can I bust your head a bit just to crack you guys up? When I walk into a hospital, that's why I used to go to Kizito then. Not because, Kizito was crazy, but we stopped. But it was because I just felt, nuns. This one is a nun. She has never married, okay? Spanish. It's not serious. Doesn't have any problem. Just focus. Look, I just scan. When I see all these young doctors, their mind is in Canada, I'm like, oh man, no do. These guys all very funny scenario, but elderly women who is in charge. I'm not very, and then elderly men specialists. Okay, did you see any placard of King's College London somewhere? Okay, yes, bam. Jokingly, but because some guys are just careless. And it's terrible. So our current healthcare system hacks navigation, the challenge of poor diagnosis, and so on and so forth. What do you have to say about that? While I prepare for questions from the audience, if there are any. Okay. Before you can now take in other things you prepared that you want to share.
That's a tough one. But I think the first thing, because the truth, there was a time, and this is true, you can't really tell a good hospital. Directory, actually, hospitals are not, but maybe not the history and all. So first thing is, I think, for example, if you move into a new area and you need to figure out a hospital, if you're part of a community, you want to ask. So, we don't advertise, and most times it's personal referral. So you want to know what other people's experience are. Then the doctors, the nurses, are they the kind of people who are patients, who are willing to listen? Because, we're taught in our practice, regardless of how good you are, you need to, one of the most important skills is your skill to listen. Because we make our diagnosis from what you say. But and that's why when you come, you won't say everything. Either it makes sense to you or not. Because just one information can change the entire diagnosis from what the doctor is thinking. So a doctor who is not listening, most likely sometimes might get it wrong. Might be lucky, of course, experience or what's prevalent in the area. I know. So because fever can tell you a lot of things. But the nature of the fever, also tells you what, and then you have your differential. So you also want to look out for those things. Whenever I go to the hospital, am I met with people who are patients, who are willing to listen to me? Then that also gives you an idea of what, because most times when you go, especially the way medical school is in Nigeria, you go through all of that and you come out and you pass. You've learned something. You understand? Once you start to practice, you actually get better. But then the skill is you listen well enough to be able to, that's one. Number two is also the other ones might not really, but then are they people who, the next thing is this, you ask questions, do they answer your question? Because sometimes a doctor or a nurse will maybe, not like they have something to hide, but it also tells their nature and the kind of, you're asking questions which are your rights, and then you're denied those rights. You also want, there's some things maybe I might not want to share because of, but those are things. So personal referral, what is their experience you want to, and then if you know somebody, that's another thing. Because almost, I'm sure within your friends, 4, 5, 6, you have one doctor. You understand? So sometimes even when you go, it's nothing wrong in checking with the person you know. Oh, this is what it is and that. And then a doctor could ask. There are hospitals where I'd asked, like my aunt in the village, she went. I said, when you get there, please tell the doctor, like speak with him. Doctor picked up the phone and we had a conversation. But there are some other places and then they say the doctor says he's not talking to me. And if it's not an emergency, I tell them to leave the place. Because I don't know, I'm seeing a patient, so I have a friend who's a doctor. In fact, I'm always happy to speak with them because they can also help. The doctor knows that person well enough to know how to explain and break it down for them, or of course, to also like, oh, okay, this doctor knows what he's saying. He knows what he's doing. You can go ahead. So I think maybe that's one way we can actually be able to pick. It's still a bit difficult to actually, say this is, but then those simple things, those little things that some people might feel that they don't matter much are actually really, really, really important in actually be able to pick a good place or not. I wanted to say something.
Please go ahead.
Go in there. Please. But I want to say about exercise.
Talk to me. I wrote it down. The science of exercise. Tell us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I said a little bit without really going into it. So exercise. The important thing about that's when we talk about cardio and all of this. Exercising is basically so if you're walking, jogging, running, whatever you're doing, your heart rate starts to go up. You're exercising. It's like that's the heart's exercise. And that's why, because it does that and sustains oxygen energy at high levels. When you're resting, it comes. So the first advantage, what I talked about earlier, your resting heartbeat is about 40, 50, 60, and that's fine. And that means that when you need energy for something more, the heart can supply that. That's one. Number two is also that when you are doing that, the flow of blood to all systems actually improves the supply of everything you need to all the systems, your organs and all, your brain, the kidneys and all. They work. So it's like you're trying to flush a system, something like that. So you increase the rate of everything for a short period of time. So blood goes, they break down things, toxins, and everything is washed out. So you get to pass out toxins and all. When you're done, you sweat. What do? You hydrate. So it's actually the entire system actually keeps the body system going for longer, being active. And it's one of the things that was found amongst all these centenarians in blue zones that I talked about. They talk about move easily, always move. So unlike what we grew up with, the father is in the sitting room and then everybody goes to do every other thing. I advise my patients that, please, because even though you have someone who can pick up your glasses in the room, please walk to the room and you move. And exercising starts from walking. So if all you could do to start is walk, so you take walks in the evening. I would advise 150 minutes a week. So 30 minutes of walk, 5 days a week. You've actually clocked in your quota. And you literally see your resting heart rate. So I think everybody will go home and figure out what their resting heart rate is. So that's your pulse rate when you're at rest. So you want to see where it is, and that also can give you an indication of how fit you are, because the lower it gets, it shows how fit. So walking actually helps. There's this interesting thing about it. When you look at someone who is lean, or diabetes and all of those things. But if you have that guy that has all those risks, exercise every day, and the other guy who is lean, who does not exercise, it's said that the other guy has a higher chance of living longer than the other person who does not exercise. So exercise is for everybody. We're not saying, okay, because you exercise, you should just stay overweight. No, that's not what we're saying. But we're saying that exercise is very important in actually living long, because it's like you're getting all your organs getting refreshed. I know, because even after those processes, and then your cells are renewed and all of that, so they can function for a longer period.
Fantastic. As we begin to tie this up, questions. To one comment, and so I want to. My uncle, one of my popular uncles, some of you know him. He had he had a very, very major back surgery, life-threatening, almost paralyzed. Why? His practice made him sit down for very long hours. I mean, I heard the gist was bad. Like really, like you had to be like bedridden. And why? He doesn't just stand up. Today on the flight, as I came in this morning, the guy there I met was telling me, because he was in business class, like, okay, go on. Why you wait on the queue with us? He now said, He said one white man told him that for every 5 minutes of sitting is one cigarette. And I said, maybe that's too much, maybe 20 minutes. Your phone will beep you. But a lot of us, like professionals like us, some of you are in this room, I'm not advising, I'm not a doctor, but I think that's what he's saying. We have to move, And I'm not always quick to be an advisor, but that's what, it's important. I saw, like, it was this big club. I saw 60, 70-year-old men playing tennis aggressively. I was like, you see this life experience, and they were just, I'm like, old men. But I know what the hell someone six like this. I'm like, oh, no, that's not my portion, no. Joe, So, but I want to digress and give Dr. Gbolahan some credit. And Dr. Gbolahan, you may not have the opportunity to do this yourself, and I want to really appreciate you for something. My friend, 5 months ago in the UK, reached out. He's a doctor. He was my bunkmate, my first bunkmate in secondary school. So he reached out, Mr. Tarfa. He started cutting me on the matter, he was following up. Apparently he was going somewhere. He said his mother is in dialysis. His mother was bedridden. And she was lying down. She had, some whatever illnesses, like Parkinson's and all. So the bone, her body was sore. Apparently they were not taking care of her properly. Reasons beyond I can't disclose. But she wasn't feeling well. And it was serious. So he called me. He said, Taf, I'm coming to Nigeria. This is the plan. I helped him call all these cook. I just don't know help. He also did the same for me, by the way, and spoiled me. He was the one that took me to that club. I didn't know he was, nothing, just, friend for friend. But here's the thing. He now said, Radisson, Red Care, one of those, the one in Lekki Phase 1, the big one. Evercare, sorry. Like, he was ready. He was going to come and burn millions. Like, okay, what, Tafa, when I come, I'll get a taxi, should pick up. I now listen. And normally me, I don't respond to people's, like that. I just like to mind, some of the sensitive issues. Somehow the spirit just stirred me. I just said, why you want to go and burn money in Evercare? You want to spend millions. What you do is this. I know somebody. Call the person, you guys should talk. Let them start working on your mom before you show. When you show, at least she's sitting up. She's been bedridden. They change all nappy, everything. As I'm talking to you now, she's going to toilet by herself. He just, Tafa, I can't thank you. Ladies and gentlemen. My advisory sense kicked in, but this is it. So, Lord, you've been changing lives. You've been doing a lot. And God really bless you. And I really want to appreciate you for that, And for those of you who don't know. So I think I have one last question, and then we can begin to tie this up. Except I'll allow you to give closing remarks and just pour your heart. But we've learned a lot, and most importantly, like I said, testing and then knowledge, and then just reaffirming some things we need to know and be careful. Now, Lagos environment and the realities of our society. Lagos is very stressful for a lot of people, and if you were to just look at the dynamics of a young person now, you've said most of them, you've kind of scattered it. How are we going to be pragmatic about it? Somebody works in teller, you're a teller. You have to be standing up because your bank is not going to give you anything special. Or you are in a job, you have to sit. Or you just live in an estate that you can't just walk. You walk out, your neighbor facing you. So you have to be practical. Then when I used to live in the Gbolahan, I would come out and go and walk in some funny places. And when I'm walking, they're looking at me like, okay, you left that place. When I hear they come from, I say, now where XP deal. So, but that was my own reality. Or when I'm in the office, I would change clothes in the bathroom and then start walking around phase 1, forming as if I live there. What I go do now? That's a joke, don't get me wrong, but that's what I want you to. So I'm not saying I'm suggesting my ideas, but just look at everything, Dr. Gbolahan, and really just speak to us about how to navigate all of this. The one that is really, I won't lie, forgive my choice of words, that is really annoying me is the way our food is being just produced. And why it's painful, sir, is because we have land. My mentor told me it's less than 3%. I don't know, it sounds too ridiculously low. Maybe 10. But less than 10% of our arable land is cultivated. The debate I had when we were doing some renovations in my house, my parents' house, was that my sister came and said, "Oh boy, remove this place. Let's what's that thing called? Interlocking." I put my foot down and said, "This one is garden. This one is garden." My mom said it's true too. Everybody back and forth, but I was like, "No, you need greens. You need to have your own food cultivated, like little things." And my mom gave me 2 plantain bunches from the garden. So, should people start opening, maybe gardening behind their house? Like, these are the things I want you to just, it may take you a while to load on it, but just tell us the hacks, the realities, and just help us. Let us, this Lagos excuse not last. For those who are listening from any part of that town, Ibadan, Abeokuta, you have no excuse. You have no excuse. Even the ones in Lagos, you actually get tires, put it behind your backyard, and make it work. At this point, you can't rely on those guys in the north. At least your vegetables and all that, your ugu, run it yourself. And don't rely on those guys. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So, you already touched on it, because we've talked about different things. I'll say a little bit about mental health. Yeah, mental health, stress management, life management, because it's very important. And then we've seen a lot of things. You've had people fall into depression and different things for different reasons, some sadly leading up to committing suicides and the likes. And the pressure, especially when you live in Lagos, is a lot. We have different stories. We have people who spend 4 hours or 5 hours going and about that number of hours back. And when they get to work, there's bashing because the boss is under pressure, and then we'll cascade that all the way. The customer is hungry, you understand? They come and then, my wife went raining courses on the other person. So you know that the stress, and that's evidence of mental stress, because it doesn't make sense. We say customer is king. I'm not sure in that market that customer is king. Not even princess or prince. You get, but so the pressure, and that tells a lot about what's going on with the mental health, and that's stress management. And there are a few acts, there are a few things we can do. Before, a lot of people were shying away from yoga. People have different mindset about it and all. Mindfulness, pride. In fact, when you're even at work, there are some breathing exercises you could actually do, like the simple ones we did in primary school. Breathe in, then you hold it, and then you release. You breathe in with your nose, you release with your mouth. There's this one that is like a box. You breathe in for 4 seconds, you release for 8 seconds, you breathe in for 4 seconds, you release for 8 seconds. These are simple things, and like you said, we can go search these things out. These are simple things you can do right at your desk. Your boss has sent you an email, and then you know how you have to take and then pray to the Holy Spirit before you respond to that email. Why not just take a few seconds and do those breathing exercises? That's one. When you're home in the morning, as part of you're praying in the morning, also have a few 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes where you try to remain still and clear your mind. You understand? What we talk about when we talk about meditation, the first time you try that, it might be very difficult. But gradually you get to the point where you can keep your mind clean and not think about anything, and you can sustain it for 5 minutes. It's like exercise or renewing of your brain, of your mental state. So those are things that, in fact, if you get so good at it, you're spending 5 hours of course, there's a lot of conversations. That's why you get so good that even in that area, you might be able, in that environment, you can actually sustain that. They're simple things, but they actually help with mental health. I talk about positivity and gratitude. Gratitude is a powerful weapon. You can't complain and be grateful. And most times, on the other side of worry is gratitude. So you can easily flip in your mind what you're worrying about to be grateful about it. So let's say, for example, so pressure at work. And then you could say that you're only worrying about work because you have work. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So in an instant, you can move from worrying about work to being grateful you found work. Yes, you have to still deal with whatever thing is, but you're then going to be dealing with it from a positive side than a negative side. So there are a lot of things but positivity, practice serendipity. All is well, all is always going to be well. You understand? Where our Father in heaven is our source and sustainer. He provides. And you could trace, and sometimes you also do that. When you're practicing gratitude, you also trace your journey up to the point where you are. There are times where you didn't understand what was going to happen, but God came through. You understand? That helps. That really helps that stressful part. So that's minded. But okay, what about the physical stress? What can you do about those things? It's also turning the period of commute. If commute is stressful, I hate traffic. I literally hate traffic. I dread it so bad until one day I was in traffic and a friend of mine that I was with was like, "It's traffic, it's Lagos, it happens." And I enjoyed the rest of it because we were gisting. But I was already stressed about the fact that the car was not moving. And then he told me that, see, it's Lagos, traffic, it happens. And in that instance, my mindset moved from, that helps the mind when you talk about stressful periods, gratitude, positivity, mindfulness, meditation, yoga. Those are things that helps you. And then also processing whatever the issue is. Take time to actually brood over it and process, go through it and not look at it like the end is the end of the thing. I don't know why I want to say this. Sometimes I've had some issues before that. I discovered that when I ask myself, this thing I'm worried about, what's the worst that could happen? And I was surprised that the worst that could happen, I can live with it. But the way I was worrying was as if something 10 times more than the worst that could happen was going to happen. And then I started to realize that, see, worry is already, it's going to steal your peace. It's going to steal your joy. It's going to steal, and in fact, might end up causing what's not supposed to happen to actually happen. You understand what I'm trying to say? So I think that's that for, I'm looking at those acts because there are some other things you might not be able, most likely you might be looking, of course, as you walk, to be able to move closer to place of work. I've lived far from work before. I now live, he said, I'm stuck on the mainland. Well, wisdom is that you should move close to where you're working, if you can. But when you can't, then there are other ways around it. Then our food, we talked about that earlier. You know, even my house, there was a time I just so tired. I was like, tell my wife, and then, of course, she's thought about it that growing up, vegetables and all, how can we? I said, this estate, how can we? I said, okay, that's what we're doing, you know. Then it starts to get soil. And the beautiful thing about life is, you know, once you focus on it, the way out starts to actually appear to you. In fact, there was a building where I go there, we have weeds, soil. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So, like, our conversations tonight is to create that is to inspire those questions, and then when we start to ask them and think about them, a lot of what we talked about and other things start to appear. And what we have talked about tonight is not just about the revelation of the knowledge. What I'm interested in is to build the skill, the discipline. So actually, after having found the lessons, found the principles, we are able to actually apply them. And then a community. Build a community, have a community of positive people. This sphere of influence. We have wonderful, spectacular people I look up to every time. I'm always excited when I come around and all. When you have that community, use that community. You understand? I have a friend, of course, a member of TBC on the mainland. We stay close to each other. And then we've been staying close to each other for maybe a few months. And then, of course, like, I need you guys to be working. I need to be working with my husband. His wife told me, okay, no problem. In my mind, I thought I was going to help him. But then I realized that we're helping each other. And then we'll of course, you bond. Even if I had issue, we'll talk. And then, in fact, they have to tell us, you guys are we're doing 90 minutes. They said, no, it's between you guys have to cut it down because we enjoy it. By the end of the time, we work for 1.5 hours. Whatever things we talked about, and you go back home a lot better. We're not going to sit at beer parlors to drink beer. But what those guys get from there, we can also get it when you have surround yourself with a community and use those communities. Thank you.
Dr. Gbolahan, we cannot thank you enough. We really do appreciate the opportunity all the way coming to share with us. And I'm happy we're having this now. It may look quiet, sober. I've not missed a few, but I need to resume and be more active. And God will help us. We're deeply grateful. And for those who are listening, at least you know what happens in 20s, 30s. Let us know it's not our portion that those things they said are now happening to people in their 20s happen to you. So don't sit here, I'm 20s, I don't care. that doesn't concern me, no, or 30s, or then talking about people like us in 40s. God, that's not our portion in Jesus' name. And knowledge is power. My people perish for lack of knowledge, and it's my people. This is an area that we don't want to struggle. I know we talk about financial empowerment, but healthcare is also another area that is very sensitive, that I feel we should live preventive. And then the thing I take away from what you said is and the Bible talks about be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and supplication, we should make our request. So, and Pastor has taught us, you cannot just be worried. I actually started to develop a sense of anxiety, and I didn't know why. December is coming, and I'm like, okay, wait. There are no bills to pay. Everything's fine. I'm like, okay, something is, God. I'm like, what? Like, December is coming, and there's nothing wrong. And you're like, okay. Like, there's no emergency. And it's a funny feeling. Why are you thinking like that? And maybe you can say it's from the scars of the past, but it's just that. And I say, no, it has to stop. So one of the areas that God has really helped me is prayer has become my powerful weapon. I don't do yoga, but prayer does the work in terms of helping, and I feel really good about it. I'm not praying because I want to come and stand here and impress you. I told you, thank God they don't ask me to lead prayer, so I don't come I just finish 5 hours. People pray for different reasons. It's because they want to track a record. So peradventure, one day I'm going to go on AY. I do 6 hours now. What are you saying? I beg. Actually, I don't do 6 hours. But the point is, that is my portion. So that's been my experience, rather. So thank you again. Dr. Brown, closing remarks. Thank you. If you have not already given that. If not, I will just ask, and the person is going to come and pray, and let's just meditate on the things we've heard, and that these words will not condemn us, but would make sure that we live up to them, that we'll be doers of them. So closing remarks, and then we now take the prayer. If you've not already given that.
I already.
Oh, you already.
Well, the thing is, just go ahead and do it.
Thank you. Please let's put our hands together for Dr. Gbolahan. And